Welcome into the Hustle Show here on Wager Talk and the Wager Talk YouTube channel. I'm Mark Zeno. He's Adam Trigger with a couple of NFL games for us to break down for you guys as we head into week one here. Games that we'll look at for our contest picks and a whole lot more. Adam, welcome in. Great to be with you. Before we get into some of the games here, I know you wanted to kind of give an update on week one lines in the NFL, the movement, what we're seeing from the market. So where is it all breaking down? What are you seeing so far?
Well, Mark, I think I'm surprised at the lack of movement on some of these week one lines. Usually, week one, we see, especially like college last week, we see these lines up all summer. There's some huge line moves, and I haven't seen much of that in the NFL. There's some moves, I suppose notable moves here. Maybe Packers down from 2.5 to 1. Little bit of movement in the Jaguars game, but these lines aren't moving much at all. I haven't seen much sharp action in any of the NFL games yet. A lot of groups not playing NFL yet for whatever reason. The Lions-Chiefs game seems to be moving as we speak. I wonder if it's moving off the Travis Kelce news that he might have gotten banged up in practice. Looks like that's going down to 6. But other than that, I just haven't seen much movement at all. And I think that's just as much of a talking point as line movement because these games have been up all summer. And I'm looking at the board, and a lot of these games are still the opener or a half point or a point off of the opener, which is a lot different than we've seen in past years. So just an interesting talking point. I don't fully know what to make of it, but it's certainly something worth noting as we head into the first week of NFL games.
One question for you from that standpoint with the lack of movement. At what point in time would it really start to set off an alarm bell with you? Like if we're still sitting here on Friday and we haven't seen any real move, is that even more of an indicator that things will hold out till Sunday, or you think it's something that we'll just have to wait and see on Sunday morning whether the lines really move somewhere?
My guess is between now, so Tuesday, and when we do the live hustle show on Thursday night at 7 p.m., we'll probably see quite a bit of movement. I think we'll start to see stuff start to move tonight into tomorrow into Tuesday, with some bigger positions being taken on Thursday and Friday. But a lot of the NFL betting has happened later, later and later, I would say, almost since like post-COVID year, when sharp bettors and groups started to wait. And I think a lot of groups and a lot of like the sharp NFL bettors will wait until that the practice injury report comes out, which is usually like Wednesday, I believe. You may know that better than me, when they start to report on like who didn't practice on Wednesday, stuff like that. I think that's when you start to see, some of the, sharper guys or groups or whatever, guys and gals or groups start to fire. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting being as these games have been up all summer and we haven't seen a ton of movement across the board.
All right, more to follow on the live movement. Again, tune in Thursday night to the Hustle Show at 7 p.m. Eastern. All right, let's get to the trend that is overriding week one in the NFL is that divisional home underdogs, since 2009, 16-7-2 straight up, 21-4 against the number. That's 84%, which is obviously an overwhelming number. We have 6 divisional games in week one. I have a hard time believing that 5 of these 6 home underdogs are all covering here. So I would tend to think that this number is going to come down a little bit just in this particular week of the NFL being, or this particular week one rather. So let's take a look at 2 games. I know you wanted to focus specifically on the Cleveland Browns hosting the Cincinnati Bengals. So what do you have here?
Well, this is a perfect example of what I was talking about, right? Like we know Joe Burrow got hurt. That's not, at this point, it's public knowledge. Everyone knows that Burrow's been dealing with an injury this summer, that he would have at one point was questionable to even play in week one. Now it looks like he's going to play, but they haven't really given us, a firm, he's 100%, what his sort of status is. And in spite of that, this line has not moved at all. It's been Cleveland minus 2.5. It's still Cleveland minus 2.5. And that's a little bit concerning to me, trying to make a case here for the Browns. I would have, thought that if there was any question that Burrow might not play or he might not be 100%, we would have seen a move in the Browns' direction, which is where I want to play this game, and I'm kind of leaning toward. I just haven't locked it in yet. But I would want to make a case for the Browns here based on just sort of, what they've done against the Bengals in the past. If you go back to last year, the game in Cleveland, Burrow was awful. That was probably the Bengals' worst performance of the entire season, or one of, they didn't play many bad games last year, the Bengals. So That was probably one of their worst performances. They did absolutely nothing. They got in a huge hole. Think that was the game where their offensive line was just torn apart. And the Browns didn't even have a great pass rush last year. Like the Browns defense was a huge sort of issue for them last year, and they tore up the Bengals offensive line in that game. And now I think the Browns are going to improve on both sides of the ball, but specifically defensively. And so that makes me want to take the Browns as the divisional home dog plus the points here. And then, of course, you throw into the mix, like if Burrow's not as mobile and he can't escape pressure, that certainly should favor the Browns in this situation. I think you have to, I guess, sort of roll the dice with Deshaun Watson. That's really the handicap here, Mark. Are you going to get Deshaun Watson playing respectable football? Because even though you have Chubb and you have a great offensive line, the Bengals are one of those teams, they're a top 5 team in the NFL. You're going to probably need a little bit of quarterback play to win that game. And he's still such a big question mark. He didn't look great in the preseason in limited action. We saw him last year come and do next to nothing in his last few games. So, are you going to get an effort from him that gets you there? I would lean toward the Browns being the right side here. It's still something I'm strongly looking at. I was hoping to get 3. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I do lean Browns as that divisional home dog. I think they're going to be good, Mark. I bet them plus 125 to make the playoffs. I thought this team has an outside shot to make the Super Bowl this year. So it's hard for me to then go and say I'm not on them plus 2.5 in week 1. But man, one of the teams I like a little bit better than them is the Bengals, so it makes it difficult. So my strong lean here is Browns plus 2.5, and I'll have a better idea of what I'm going to do with that game probably in the next 24 hours.
Well, let me add one nugget here, because reading up on the Browns, and Kevin Stefanski is a run-first coach, always has been, right? And if you want to take some pressure off Deshaun Watson and sort of ease him back into things, the availability of Nick Chubb and the viability of him to continue to run. Now, last year, their rush offense actually took a step back from where it was in 2021. And I don't know how much you follow this or not, Trig, but Kevin Stefanski was huge in 2 tight end sets. And last year, David Njoku was not healthy for a bunch of games, and it changed things dynamically as far as their run percentages, particularly in early downs when he wasn't there. I just pay attention, something to take a look for. Pay attention to the Browns tight ends, how healthy they are and where they are and what the health status is, because if he has them both, I think Chubb is going to be a lot more effective in the run game than obviously making things much easier for Deshaun Watson in the passing game.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with that. And when Njoku was healthy last year, he pretty much broke out. I mean, he had a stretch of games where he was sort of like a breakout guy in terms of production. So that'll be interesting to look at. And again, I lean Browns. I'll have to talk myself off of it. I won't be surprised if I got Browns 2.5 in pocket by Sunday.
All right, one of the games, divisional games I'm looking at here, and one that'll likely make my card for the Circa contest coming up. I'd be shocked if it doesn't. I don't think there are 5 other games that would bump this out of the way. But let's go to the NFC East and get the Giants and Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. Obviously, both of these teams kind of vying for position here in the NFC East behind the Eagles. The Cowboys roster is loaded. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. On the defensive side of the ball, they bring back a team that's top 5 in points allowed last year, and they led the NFL in takeaways. Whatever the narratives are around the Cowboys offense, obviously Dak Prescott and the interceptions, I think those are just narratives. They're a top 10 team in the NFL in rushing EPA per play and yards after contact. Their offense was first in the red zone in EPA, 5th in third down conversions overall, and 3rd in pace. They've done that the last 2 years. They play fast. They keep moving the ball down the field. In 2 games last year against the Giants defense, the Cowboys, with Cooper Rush under center, mind you, in the first game, they had 391 yards of offense. Then with Dak, they had 430. Now, this is a Cowboys defense that only allowed 336 in game 1, 300 in game 2. Cowboys averaged 172.5 rushing yards in both those games. It's now Tony Pollard's backfield. I'm not sure the Giants have an answer for Pollard, who averaged 5.2 yards per carry last season. But the biggest thing for me, and I've been saying this all off season, Trig, when it comes to the Giants, they spent so much time focusing on Saquon Barkley. Saquon this, Saquon that, his franchise tag and everything else. If the Giants are going to be successful again, and they're going to avoid that regression that everybody is talking about with them winning so many one-score games, it's going to come from Daniel Jones being better. 2 games last year, he only completed 56.9% of his passes, only threw for 1 touchdown, didn't rush for any touchdowns, and only combined 93 rushing yards in the 2 games. So I know Saquon's going to be part of this whole thing. But when you look at Daniel Jones last year, Inside the red zone, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. On the other 80 yards of the field, he kind of stunk. Like, he was way below average. The real thing here is, Trig, is that we don't really have any sample size with another year under Brian Daboll, what that means for Daniel Jones, how much more efficient will he be? We just simply don't know at this point. But I give the edge to the Cowboys defense here early on in the season. The other thing here, Trig, and I don't know if this necessarily matters to you guys, but the Cowboys have won 11 of the last 12 against the Giants. They're 16-4 against them straight up in the last decade. In those last 11 wins, only one of them fell in this number of 3 or 3.5 or 4 or less points. So these games have been decided by the Cowboys in pretty convincing fashion over the last year. And as much as it pains me to say this as a Giants fan, I'm going to lay it with the Cowboys here. They've had the Giants number. They're a better team. They have a better defense. I know Daboll's a better coach, but, Jimmy's and Joe's here versus X's and O's. Cowboys are just better on the field at this point. I'm going to lay it with them.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. CT Betts, when I was on vacation with him in Colorado back in June, made me bet Cowboys. I think we got -3. We thought it might move a little bit more than that. I think it's like 3.5, pretty much most places now. But so I have a small bet on the Cowboys at this point. I haven't came back and taken more yet, but I can't disagree. And it just goes back for me. It's just me not being very high on the Giants. Last year, I bet the Giants season win total over. I was extremely high on them out the gate. And I think this year, based off of what they did last year, my guess is there's going to be some regression there. So I could probably only fade the Giants in the early going, just like sort of based on where my season outlook is on that team. I guess and the other thing is, it's like these two teams in particular, the market kind of likes both of them. Like, people just love to bet on the Cowboys. They love to bet on the Giants. But in this case, when they're playing both, I feel like we might see a situation where we have a little bit of a square dog on Sunday Night Football here, in which case I'll be even more likely to want to jump in with the Cowboys. So agree with you there, Mark.
Yeah. So again, that's, I'm 99% sure that'll be on my Circa card here in week 1. Any other final thoughts here, Trig, before we wrap things up?
So I guess my final thoughts would be, we kind of touched on Circa Million a little bit, but my favorite contest, Circuit Survivor, week 1, man, last year, half the field was gone after week 1. And once again, it's a very tough, week 1 is tough. Are you going to sort of join the masses? It looks like everyone's going to be on the Ravens, right? Like, they're the biggest favorite on the board. It looks like 10-point favorite. And yeah, I would say most people are going to either use that or use one of their picks on that. Mark, would you dare use the Commanders, knowing that absolutely. You might not yet? Yes. So would I. That's I think I'm leaning
the
towards.
Only place I looked. I know Sam Howell's a huge question mark, but it isn't about the Commanders being good. It's about the Cardinals being bad.
Well, and you're playing Survivor, right? Like, when else are you going to use the Commanders? It's right. Almost, now my thing is, how many people are going to think the same way? Because there's an overwhelming amount of money on the Commanders this weekend. A lot of people are laying the points. So you have to imagine that might be a more popular Survivor pick than you would initially think. And for Survivor, for me, it's all about pick equity, right? Like, you want to be on the pick that has you want to be on a good pick with as few people on it as possible, or else you're never going to win Survivor, right? If you don't zig where other people zag over the course of Survivor, either you're going to advance, with them, or you're going to get knocked out with them. So it's like, that's always the sort of the battle with Survivor. Maybe the Seahawks, they're at home against the Rams. That's one that I think the betting's a little bit more split, but I think the Seahawks likely win that game. So that's
2 weeks
one
ago, I was higher on the Rams. The Cooper Kupp news change. I mean, I at least like the Rams plus the points. I knew that much, but the Cooper Kupp news changes things a ton for that offense.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly does, and that's like, I've got a bunch of Survivor picks to deploy here. I'll probably be on the Seahawks in some capacity. It really feels like it's going to be Commanders and Ravens, but hey, if they're good picks and he can get you through, it's a 20-week contest, so you got to get through week 1 regardless.
I'll throw one more at you that requires extra large huevos, as they say. Do you want to trust Sean Payton in his first game at home against the Raiders?
I don't know. So that's one where I lied. There was a little sharp money in the NFL. This was a couple weeks ago. I know some respected people that took the Raiders at
Oh,
what I
wow.
think was 4. I think it was 4 at the time. I believe it was 4.5 or 4. Might have been right around when Judy got hurt, or was banged up. But that definitely got a little of a little sharp money. I don't know where it's at in terms of the betting splits right now. It looks like it's still about even, in terms of, tickets money on both sides. But I do know some sharp people that took 4 and maybe even 4.5 with the Raiders. Me personally, Mark, I think the Raiders are going to be one of the worst football teams in the league this year. I think they could be a bottom. They'll be in the bottom 5. I'm pretty confident in saying that. I think they're going to be really bad. So I don't know if I will be on the Raiders plus the points. I'm not fully sold on the Broncos, not as much as I thought I would be. I thought I was going to be cut because I was high on the Broncos last year, and that didn't work out. And so I thought for sure I was going to love the Broncos coming into this season. I'm kind of lukewarm on them. I got to be honest. I'm not sure which way I want to go there.
I wonder if Kelly in Vegas has the cojones to pick the Broncos in Survivor in Week 1 as her team. That'll be interesting. One more.
I think that goes against her rules, Mark. You got to know Kelly with Survivor, laundry list of rules. I think divisional game is against her rules. I doubt she'll be on the Broncos.
One more quick angle, and two teams automatically kind of get taken out of play. But playing against the rookie starting quarterback. So C.J. Stroud, we talked about the Ravens. You get Anthony Richardson against the Jags, but Bryce Young, Bryce Young, rather, in Carolina against Atlanta on the road. Rookie quarterback on the road might be an interesting fade spot where you could take Atlanta early on and you might not have another spot to take them the rest of the year.
Mark, we have been talking about the Falcons since last year. I was all over the Falcons toward pretty much all season. Part of the reason I had a really good NFL season last year was I bet the Falcons a lot, because they pretty much always covered. Every time we bet on them, they covered. Yep. And, our friend Brian Power, who does this show with us, I know he's high on the Falcons this year. We've been talking about them for months, and I was getting worried, is everyone in on the Falcons here? Is this going to be everyone's sort of trendy, pick to, really sort of break out this year? Because we all know how that works. I did take over 8.5 here on the season win total, probably a month ago at this point. I have a hard time arguing. This matchup is tricky, but I don't trust the Panthers. I still like the Falcons. I don't know how much I'm going to be on them week to week, because I think now we're going to have to back them as a favorite, right? Last year, we were always catching points with this team last year. Now we're going to have to lay 3.5, 3, whatever it is. That's a whole different ball game, but I'm still high on the Falcons. I know you may agree with me. I know we both like Bijan Robinson. So, we'll see how it goes. But I'm high on the Falcons still.
I think Arthur Smith's one of the most underrated coaches in the league. All right. That'll do it for us here on this mini edition of The Hustle. He's Adam Trigger. Follow him on Twitter at TopFlightSI. I'm Mark Zinno at the same handle, MarkZinno on Twitter as well. Make sure you guys like and subscribe to that Wager Talk YouTube channel. And check out The Hustle Show, the full extended version, Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on Wager Talk TV. For Adam Trigger, I'm Mark Zinno. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you on Thursday.